Give the microphone.
Yep.
My name is Henry Krug, K-R-U-G, not related to the Champagne people, unfortunately. At the risk of being put in the ejector seat, we've heard a lot this morning from various speakers and also members of the audience about things being politicised, about duplication, about red tape and governance generally. And I have been saying to my wife for the last 20 or 30 years, she's sick of it already, but she's got to listen to it again this morning. I want to query the necessity why we have to have states where everything that we do in Australia is duplicated. We have a national health minister, a state health minister, transport ministers, education minister. Everything is duplicated. Everything means we have 3 layers of government: local, state and federal. Obviously we have to have the federal. Obviously we need the local to collect the garbage and look after the roads. But to my way of thinking, I'm not a politician, I don't vote for any particular party. We are being over-governed and the cost to the community is such that a lot of the money that we should be spending on structure, on improvement, on agriculture is being wasted by the fact that we have that intermediate level of government which creates an enormous amount of duplication. For instance, you go to New South Wales, you can learn to drive a car at the age of 16. In Victoria, 18. In some states, the speed limit is 110. In others, it's 120. I reckon you can kill yourself at any speed if you want to, and whether you're 18 or 17 doesn't really matter. My question to the panel is, do we need the extra layer of government, the state government?
Can we get security to remove this instigator?
Tony, sorry, Robbie.
Yeah, I've got a comment on that. I kind of playfully suggested at the time of the celebration of Federation in 2001 that one could actually have a conversation about the way we are federated. Because it seemed to me that everything above Capricorn has more to share than with the people down south or on the coast, etc. So in a way you could do above Capricorn the rest of Western Australia, Queensland taking its share of the Northern Territory, the arid stuff, New South Wales taking care of its bit, and then take up what was not such a playful suggestion by Jeff Kennett at one time, suggesting that economically South Australia and Victoria and Tasmania, and I say this as a proud South Australian, might be better off if they federated as one state as well. So I have no idea what I imagine this is an absolute impossibility, but I do think that there's substance in your question, not just about governance, but also about the logic of the way people share interests around Australia. I imagine it would never happen, but it's a very good thing to talk about.
Tony?
Just a short comment. I think that I agree with what you say to a great degree, but I think we have to be very realistic about this, that it ain't going to happen. But it doesn't mean that it can't, that modifications can be made, and a little bit like Robin's saying, let's have a dialogue about it, which I prefer dialogue than debate, so that we try and look at the other person's point of view positively. And because the system ain't working as well as it could. It's all right to say democracy is great, but democracy fails, but what better system is there? But we can make our democracy, I think, work a lot better with true cooperation between so many bodies all over the place. There are a lot of state issues that are state issues, but they're common between the states, and that's where it needs to be brought together. The federal government can be more of a coordinating than a top-down controlling, and they'll never be able to mini-manage things.
I'll go up the back with Michael. Did you want to say
I think you have to be just a little bit careful. If you go to a two-tier system, do you want everything controlled from Canberra? And I'm not criticising that, but that's a consideration. I think the first step really is to stop the duplication, and that's a management system where you've got federal and state saying we are going to stop the duplication. Health ministers get together and get this sorted. Educationists get together, get this sorted, and COAG then standing up and ticking it. So what it requires is the will to do it, and then the identification where all this duplication is taking place, and then get on and do it. And that should be, I think, a public requirement of government.
I've actually got one particular example in the centenary of Canberra. We've got a project called One River, and that's, if you again go to our website canberra100.com.au, and you'll start to see a link to that project. One River recognises the national capital as the largest city in the Murray-Darling Basin. And so what we've got is a project that goes from way up north in Queensland all the way down to Goolwa and tracks the river systems through arts projects. But that's already resulted in a knowledge exchange between Major Sumner, Uncle Moogie down in the Goolwa lands, and Adrian Brown and the Park Ranger, the Ngunnawal Park Rangers here. So that's a good example of linking four states and a territory through the water system, through an arts project dialogue, but there are some scientific. So I think that's a good example of a sort of ephemeral project, if you like, where you can start a different kind of conversation. And that was pretty much because I thought there would be a more positive conversation to be had than just the ones that we see all the time, which is about divisiveness over water. So it's a nice example of the kinds of things you can do around that.
It is at night.
Camilla Benson from Adelaide. I had two questions for the panel, one of which was touching on Robin's point earlier about a complacency in younger generations, particularly in regard to democracy, but I propose that maybe there's a complacency generally in what we could largely or loosely call Generation Y. I was wondering if the panel could comment on that and how we may overcome it, if that's their perception. And secondly, we've talked about a number of health issues, and something that hasn't been mentioned is mental health. And I would suggest that along with obesity, smoking, alcoholism and the like, that's as important as any of those things.
Sally, and maybe Rochelle.
I'll just be very short and sharp. Another Goethe quote. There was he said, you know, whatever you think you can do or dream you can, begin it, because boldness carries with it power, magic, and genius. And I think that I agree. Whatever can be done to shape people, again in Hollows, you know, there is no alternative for inaction. Is I think something pivotal at the moment. So make that comment and pass it on.
And also, I think education. A stronger education in civics from primary school would really help in that kind of understanding. I wonder if
important. Now, I just want to say a word about politicians. And I'm not here, no, I'm not defending anything, I'm not discussing anything that's happening at present. But who voted for them? There is no politician in a parliament in Australia who didn't get the number of votes on the ballot papers somewhere in this country. So all of us really have a role to play in determining how we choose our representatives, how they get there and what they do. It's no good afterwards talking about they. We're part of the process of them getting there. And there are changes I would make, but this is not a time for a dissertation on political parties or other things. But don't just talk about what's happening, you know, feel involved and a bit responsible for how our system is working. Michael made it plain at the beginning. We do have good institutions in this country. The Parliament basically is a good institution. Our actual constitution works splendidly. It has checks and balances within it which give us lots of opportunities. We have basic police force structure, public service, everything you could think of. And for every one of them, you can go down and write a list of names of things that have happened that in a sense really only prove the fact that basically they're sound and that we do